Hi everyone, it's Don. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, you notice I put out a video earlier this morning asking why flights from India in Canada are not banned. And I gave some pretty good reasons why they should be. In fact, we've been having this call for weeks now, saying that this should be happening. Why are we not doing this? And of course, last night, Canada decided they're going to ban flights. But I want to go over with you an interview I saw and with the explanation and see kind of how weak it is, as well as their thought process on how long it takes to come up with a reason to ban flights. So this is an interview with CTV News in Ottawa with the Transport Minister of Canada. And he's asking him questions. And I like this interview, by the way, because they actually ask him some of the tough questions. Where if you ever listen to CBC News, which is our Canadian broadcast corporation, if you're talking about the Liberal government, which is the current government in power, they get nothing but softball questions because, in case you don't know, here in Canada, the CBC is basically funded by the government. I mean, they don't get much of their money from ad revenue or anything. It's government money, $1 billion a year to keep the CBC going. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. And so often, the questions they asked are very, very light and avoid the main questions. And sometimes CTV does the exact same thing. But I really enjoyed this interview. And then I'm going to talk to you after this interview. I'll comment a little bit on it. And I'm going to tell you their process for coming up with finally the answer of banning those flights. So let's watch a little bit of this interview.
Gabber, the Transport Minister, just finished that briefing and a vote in the House of Commons. Minister, good to have you here on CTV News Channel. Can you tell us what finally prompted the ban on flights, both direct and indirect, from India and Pakistan, given the fact that the variant has already arrived? And the question is this just too late? You missed your opportunity.
Evan, thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak with you tonight. Look, our system of measures is working. What we have implemented since the beginning of last year, since the start of the pandemic, we added layers upon layers of restriction and protective measures to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And what we've said to Canadians all along is that we will stop at nothing to protect their health, and that we're always going to be guided by data, health expert advice. So what we've seen, and by the way, you will know this and your viewers will know this, we have the strictest measures at our borders today. We require people.
Okay, this is the rhetoric the government always comes up with. They always say, we have the strictest border crossings in the world. No, you don't. First of all, Australia blows our restrictions out of the water. They just banned all international flights, period. Period. How do you stop a variant from coming into your country? Don't let anyone into your country. Boom, done. Guess what? Australia doesn't have the variants. Guess what? Australia doesn't even have COVID. But, Canada's rampant right now. We are one of the fastest growing countries in the world with COVID again, after being one of the smallest in the world. Not only that, they say the measures are working, except right now, the #1 cause of COVID in Canada is the UK variant. The second #1 cause is the Brazilian variant. Well, if our measures are working, how did those variants get into the country in the first place? Did they jog over from the UK? Did they swim over from Brazil? No, they got on flights and they came back to Canada. So him saying that our measures are working is a complete falsity. They are not working. If they were working, we would not have any UK variant, and we would not have the big spread that we have right now in Canada. But let's see the answers.
People to be tested prior to getting on a plane. We require people to be tested once they arrive. Then we require them to stay at a 3-day hotel and wait for the test results upon arrival. And then they're asked to quarantine or isolate at their home. So right. I want to make sure that you know and your viewers know that our borders are not porous. However, what we saw over the last few days, we've seen numbers, 50% of the infection rates that we caught through these measures were coming from India. And given the situation in India, and given the expert advice that the situation in India seems to be getting worse and worse, we decided that we should add another layer. We're suspending commercial flights, passenger flights from India and Pakistan for 30 days until we assess what to do next.
Right. Sir, let me just fact check you respectfully. I know you said that your measures are effective. I talked to epidemiologist Colin Furness today, the doctor. He's no, they're not. All the variants that have arrived here, South Africa, the UK, and Brazil, have all come from flights and from travel. So they haven't worked. 2, I know you say there's strict measures, but there's lots of porous holes. Private jets can come in. People on private jets don't get the same screening. You can drive across the border without the quarantine. And finally, sir, just respectfully, Health Canada has data that shows in the last 2 weeks, 112 international flights have arrived in Canada with at least one or more case of COVID-19. Sir, 32 of those flights were from India, but there are flights from what? 20 from the United States, 10 from France, 10 from the United Emirates. Why ban India and Pakistan? I understand, but why not other places that are literally also bringing in cases of positive COVID?
I really understand the anxiety that people are feeling and the anxiety that you're reflecting right now. But let me also, with all humility, I want to correct you on 2 things. Private jets are subjected to the same strict measures. Border crossers are subjected to the quarantine rules. So it's very important that we,
Okay. Did you see the look on the interviewer there from CTV News when he said, if you cross the border, land border, you're under the same quarantine rules? No, you're not. You do not have to go to a quarantine hotel. And they ask you, you notice how they said, they ask you to quarantine for 14 days. There are so many people coming into the country right now, there is no way to track people and see if they're staying in isolation and quarantining. By the way, quarantining means going to a house. So if there's 9 people living in that house, they're not quarantined. They're not self-isolating. Only the person who arrived has to do that, supposedly. So those other 9 people could catch it from that one person and then spread it out to the community. So no, there is a lot of loopholes to get around this. And also, I believe he's about to say private jets are under the same scrutiny. Oh, you have to get a test when you get back in, and you're supposed to quarantine, but there's no quarantine hotel for private jets neither. There are lots of loopholes, but and also a lot of other countries with much stricter guidelines. But let's see what else he says.
Your viewers know the measures that we have, and it's very important for them to know.
No, sir. Let me correct. Sorry. If you drive across the border, you don't have to go to a hotel. You don't have to go to a quarantine hotel. I know you have to go home and quarantine. There's very little enforcement on that, but you don't have to go to a hotel to quarantine.
So you said quarantine, and I wanted to set the record straight. You have to quarantine for 14 days, and there are enforcement mechanisms where we're working with security bodies where they randomly check on people. So there are measures. And by the way, those land border crossers are being tested as well. So look, I challenge you to find any country in the world that has as strict measures as we do. Now,
he's going to regret he said that because the interviewer calls him on it.
Well, to be fair, listen, I'm not trying to pick holes. Australia and New Zealand force people to quarantine at government hotels for 2 weeks. In Canada, it's 3 days. And you could pay a fine and just get through.
So Australia and New Zealand, and we talked about this, they don't have land borders. They're an island. There are 50,000 people of their citizens that are unable to go back home. So we can nitpick here, and it's important to have this debate. It's important for Canadians to see that we thought through all these options and that we're really doing what we need to do to protect their health and safety. So I appreciate these questions. I appreciate you challenging me, and I want to give your viewers the response and why these decisions are so difficult and complicated, but we've never shied away from taking difficult decisions. So these measures are important to protect Canadians. The infection rate that we're seeing from India and Pakistan is higher than any other country. So we decided that on top of the other layers to suspend flights right now from India and Pakistan.
And just so to and if you're not flying directly, indirectly, you could, let's say, land in the United States, but you have to get another test there. Is that right?
That's correct. So, we know that sometimes people might want to take indirect flights. Well, those individuals have to get a test, have to get out of the airport, wherever their last point of departure, get a test, a PCR test, and then to be allowed to.
So there you go. You have an interview with CTV. Obviously, he was questioning, why is it taking so long, and why did it take so long? So I did some research and I listened to some different doctors and scientists who are on the panel for the federal government to actually make these decisions. And here's the breakdown logic and the reasoning. They say, so they see that there are a lot of cases in India starting up. And they say, well, there's some strain possibly of a new variant of the virus. So it becomes a variant of interest. A variant of interest. So we're gonna watch it for a little while. We're gonna watch it. And then as it's exponentially rising in India, in a matter of a month, it went from 10, 20,000 cases to 300,000 cases a day. So in a couple weeks, they say, well, yeah, it does look like it's spreading more. Oh, by the way, sometime we don't know how the vaccines are working against it, and it does seem to be overriding the other variants in the area. So now it becomes a variant of concern. Now that variant is a concern. And so they watch it and watch it again. And as they see it's not slowing down and rising and rising and rising, then they say, okay, it's a variant and we need to do something about it. But the trouble is, that takes a long time. So while doctors and scientists out there are screaming at government officials to lock people in their houses and close businesses completely and stop the spread, don't let anyone get together, don't let anyone go here, don't let anyone go there, close the restaurants, close the golf courses, close the businesses, close the schools. One of the causes is the slow reaction of our actual scientists and medical staff who are advising the government, and how long it takes to make that decision. Because in British Columbia, there's already over 45 cases of the India variant in that province. There's now one in Alberta, and there's now one in Quebec as well. Those are just the ones they caught. As we all know, these variants can take up to 14 days to materialize. All virus can take up to that. You can show no symptoms and no signs for 14 days. So taking a test 3 days ahead of time really doesn't show much, because in 6 days, all of a sudden, you can show the signs. So there's some logic there. So once again, the real trouble I see with all the logic and the things that are going on is everybody is being reactive. Reaction to what's going on, as opposed to proactive. Wait Cases are on the rise in India. We're not sure why. Stop flights from India. It should have been done weeks, if not a month ago. And the trouble is, it takes so long in politics to make up your mind, your decision to do anything. And we pay the price. We continue with lockdowns. We continue with the spread of the virus. And again, reactionary instead of being proactive. Had they just done this a month ago, we may never have seen the Indian variant in the country. Had they done this at the beginning, we may never have seen the UK variant, the African variant, the Brazilian variant, and we would not be in the mess we are in today in Canada. So besides letting us down on getting vaccines into the country, they've also let us down in stopping variants of the virus from getting into the country. But you're right, I guess, Minister of Transport. Your things are working. If that's considered working.